Hello, BookTube. I got a quick Wednesday MegaStuff video for you here. I'm a little subdued, not feeling all that well, and in addition to that, I don't know if this is going to go up on a Wednesday because it's dark and drizzling rain here in Boston. It has been all day, and that tends to kill my large uploads. I can still email, I can still log on to social media and whatnot, but when I try to upload files, that tends to kill them. So I'll try to upload this, but I might have to upload it when the rain stops. I would originally have thought that would be tomorrow, since Boston is an arid desert climate. It never rains here at all, of any kind: rain, dew, snow, sleet, never. But even so, it looks like it might rain more tomorrow than it is today. So I figured I might as well try. But I don't know if this will go up on a Wednesday, and I've only got a few things to talk about anyway. One of them being Pretober, my doomed Pretober updates on these MegaStuff videos. Those of you who have been following the melodrama will know that I had a Pretober project all lined up, and it seemed fine to me. It seemed to marry a momentary topical interest of mine about our relationship with technology with a larger interest, which was writing science fiction. And it didn't. It fizzled completely. I can't imagine writing Kendra Victrix now. And that led me to cast all around for other alternatives, including my backup idea, which is about 19th century Boston intellectual life, a novel about men and women at a library. And I started fleshing that out at the Eliot Annex, is the working title of it. I'm a big fan of working titles. They usually help me. Not in 2020, but usually. But the more I flesh that out, the more I think it's not going to work, which leaves me nowhere. So it's Wednesday. We've got maybe 2 days left until NaNoWriMo, and I have no idea what I'm doing. I would say the sky is falling, except I've actually been in this position a couple of times before. A couple of times in the years that I've been doing NaNoWriMo, I've thrown everything out at the last minute and plotted the night before. So plotted from supper time on the last day of October until the stroke of midnight on the first day of November, and then started writing immediately from the plot and just work things out as you go along. I don't want to do that, but I have a couple of other ideas, but nothing that's firm enough to talk about. And I mentioned the other day, I could always resort to fan fiction. It's looked down upon in some quarters of NaNoWriMo, not officially. NaNoWriMo officially, the official poobahs at NaNoWriMo don't look down at anything, bless their hearts. They just want you to write. They just want to write your guts out. Take your editing goggles off and just write. Get to writing. Firm up your writing muscles. That's all they want. They're the best. But the forums have all sorts of opinionated people, and they make good points. Fan fiction shifts a lot of the burden of what it is to write fiction onto other people's shoulders. And so as a last resort, I thought about that, but then I had a couple of you email me. I leave my email on every video, and you're welcome to email me about anything, provided you don't expect an immediate response or a long, detailed response. But a few of you emailed and said, you're wrong. No offense intended. You're all my loyal Donoghue-gonauts, but no offense intended. But fan fiction is not the last resort. And one of you, you'll know who you are, you're watching, I emailed back and said, what on earth could be more of a last resort than fan fiction? And she wrote back, and she was right. She said, pantsing is more of a last resort than fan fiction. For those of you who aren't familiar with NaNoWriMo technology, NaNoWriMo is split between 3 different tribes. They don't war because they're too busy eating Doritos on the couch, but they would war if they could. There are plotters, people who take advantage of Pretober, of prepping in October, to plot and plan and outline what they're going to write in November, in whose ranks I have been forever. And then there are pantsers, which is short for seat of the pants, people who don't plot at all. They just start writing on the 1st of November, and they go where the story takes them. And the drawbacks are obvious, right? If you don't plot, then you could very well be writing garbage. You could be writing something none of which you're going to save at the end of the month. Well, the whole point of NaNoWriMo, one of them, the main point is to get you writing. But another point, I think a lot of people go into NaNoWriMo hoping that they'll have something they can use in some way at the end of that month. But it's not all just, ad-libbing. And with pantsing, you run a significant risk that won't be true. And then the third group is plantsing, which is a somewhat awkward melding of the two. People who plot and pants at the same time. And that correspondent was absolutely right. I could just pants November or NaNoWriMo 2020. I could just do that. I don't know. I have no firm ideas now, so I have no actual Pretober MegaStuff update. Another thing I want to mention before we get to mail, I've got a couple of packages of mail, is comic books. Today is Wednesday. If it weren't end of the world dark and rainy, and if my comic shop were on my route, and if all those things were true, I would probably go to the comic shop. In a normal world, I would probably go to a comic shop on a Wednesday and look at the new comic books and maybe the new remainders, see what's available, see what might strike my interest. You'd love doing that. And I had a good crew at my Newbury Comics on Newbury Street, the original Newbury Comics. I had a good crew there, a group of young people who got to know me. They got to know when I was coming in. There were a couple of those young. There was a crew of about 5 young people when I was there a year ago, and of that, probably 2 of them had bright green lipstick, shaved side of the head, and looked at me with undisguised contempt. I'm sure that if their manager had not been standing right there, they would have spat on me simply because I was a white man. Their look said, "No colored need apply." They didn't have the sign in the window because it's not legal, but the look said that as plainly as possible, that we are in the late 1930s, and we don't want you in this store. My manager's standing right there, so I have to take your money. But I don't have to look at you. I don't have to make eye contact with you. I don't have to touch you or touch anything that you've touched. I don't have to make any kind of conversation with you. I have to conduct this transaction, but it's making me want to vomit. And 2 of the crew of the young people at this store, of course, young people, no one who isn't a young person in college would ever act that way. But 2 of those people were like that. But the other 3 were wonderful. And they got to know me, and I got to know them. They got to know that I wasn't Satan just because I'm a cis-het white male. And we got to talking every week, and I miss that. That's why I used to go into shops, not for the commerce, but for the people. I don't do that anymore. And thanks to occasional care packages from Mark Richardson and his family up in Vermont, I haven't really needed to get the one ongoing monthly comic, The Legion of Superheroes, that I would otherwise get. But to scratch the itch, I have been reading over my graphic novels, my collections, my omnibus editions, occasionally getting new ones through eBay or Craigslist or whatever. And the one I wanted to just give you a little bit of a thumbnail of that. The one that I've been looking at this week is this one. It's Avengers Marvel Masterworks Volume 16. These are from the 70s. They were written largely by Jerry Conway and Jim Shooter. And this particular hardcover collection starts off with a change in the roster, a classic Avengers staple issue where, through one reason or another, it is necessary to change the membership of the Avengers. Usually because large numbers of older team members are leaving all at the same time. That's usually the reason. And Conway decided to write it as an event, make it a public event, make it so that when the Avengers change their roster, all of New York is interested. That was a great idea, a stroke of genius. And he came up with a team which consisted of Iron Man, Yellow Jacket, who is Hank Pym, who was Ant-Man originally, the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, his wife, which means that the team had 3 founding members, Captain America, the Vision, Scarlet Witch, and the Beast, Hank McCoy, who was a founding member of the X-Men, and whose mutant ability in the X-Men was that he was anthropoidal. He was like a gorilla, like a human gorilla. His arms were as long as his legs. Both were incredibly strong. His agility was amazing. His hand-eye coordination was amazing, etc., etc. Leaping ability, amazing. And then later on in Hank McCoy's storyline, he causes what later Marvel writers would call a secondary mutation, where he retains all of those original mutant abilities, but he grows blue fur all over his body, and it sharpens his canine teeth. So that is the Beast who is in these issues. And for some reason, Jerry Conway liked the idea of adding him to the Avengers. No idea why. He loved the idea, in fact. But that is the team that we get at the beginning of these issues, and things start off right away. An old, dumb Avengers villain, Wonder Man, is revived. Jerry Conway and Jim Shooter decided to revive him, first as a zombie and then as a genuine character, and he joins the Avengers, only as a good guy this time. He's incredibly boring. He always has been. But fans wrote in. They loved having the Beast on the team. No idea why. And they loved the return of Wonder Man, a totally bland character, totally derivative. But so those two stuck around, and they've been through many, many storylines since. But this original story has some moving elements that I really liked. Jerry Conway, if you've got Jerry Conway in a storyline, he's going to look back as well as forward in terms of characters. So he doesn't waste much time before he introduces or reintroduces 1940s Marvel timely character called the Whizzer. That's his code name, the Whizzer. Bob Frank, who is sort of the Flash. He can run at super speed. It's pretty pointedly pointed out, even back in the 1940s, that he can't run all that fast. We're not talking interdimensionally fast like the Flash. He's just really, really fast. That's all. He can run 100 miles an hour. So he can turn in small spaces. He can turn himself into a battering ram. He can run so fast that it's hard to get a bead on him. That sort of thing. And he is reintroduced. He's an older figure now. The timeline stays the same. He is a character who still fought in World War II. And unlike Captain America, he wasn't in suspended animation the whole time. He was just growing old. He has gray hair and a heart condition. And he's introduced in here. There's a bit of play here about him being the father of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. That Conway and et al. Originally thought up that idea, and it seemed really good. It seemed like a really good idea that this Bob Frank was a mutated person, and so was his wife, that they would probably have mutant children. And other writers changed that. John Byrne, in particular, changed that, added a wrinkle that certainly adds family drama to the story of the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. But at the time that this run on the Avengers is going on, that hadn't happened yet. So as far as this run is concerned, the Scarlet Witch thinks the Wizard, that Bob Frank is her father. And the team has lots of adventures right out of the get-go. And they deal with a Wonder Man who has returned, and there's some great John Buscema artwork. There are a couple of funny moments, at least to me. There's one in a course of 3 or 4 issues. Once the dramatic climax of the issue is reached, you've got a comatose somebody or other, and it's just assumed that Hank McCoy, the Beast, is going to carry the body around until they get to the lab or the infirmary or whatever, or the hospital. And at one point, he actually says, I'm not a beast of burden. I'm not the team's donkey here. And one of the characters, I don't remember who it was, I'm not going to flip through it here, but one of the characters says, in many ways, Hank McCoy, you are our strongest member. And I thought, I paused for a minute. I read that line when it came out 50 years ago, but I paused this time around and thought, that's not in any way true. On this particular team, that's not in any way true. The Vision, at his most, he can control his density, and at his density, he can lift 85 tons. Tony Stark, inside his Iron Man armor, can lift 85 tons. The Beast can lift 1 ton. So he's not anywhere close to being physically the strongest member. Okay, what about intellectually? Well, no. Hank Pym is far more brilliant as a biochemist than Hank McCoy is, obviously, since Hank McCoy's #1 foray into biochemistry is actually a failure. It causes him to grow blue fur when that wasn't his intent. So no, it's not that. Tony Stark, of course, is technologically far more brilliant than Hank McCoy, so he's not the strongest member there. What about tactically? Well, no. No, not really. All of the Avengers have more experience than he does. He's still, in the Marvel continuity, a kid. And Captain America, of course, outclasses him when it comes to tactical ability. All right, well, what about socially the strongest? What about morally the strongest? No, not really. You could say, well, doesn't it grow your moral fortitude to be a mutant? Mutants are hated and feared in the Marvel Universe. Okay, yeah, that's true. But the Scarlet Witch is a mutant as well, and was a mutant terrorist as part of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and is a woman, and married an android, causing picketers outside of Avengers Mansion. So she probably has more social toughness than the Beast, to say nothing of Janet Van Dyne, whose husband has gone insane 4 times by the time this story happens, and is just about to go insane again. He goes insane in this volume for the 5th time. So I thought, I saw that toss-off line and thought, why don't you just admit it? You can't think of any use for this glorified acrobat other than to carry things around. But this storyline has a few guest spots. There's one guest story that's drawn by George Tuska, who was a World War II era, a staunch old Marvel hack from the old days. Not a bad drawing style, but he didn't pay any attention to story breakdowns that writers gave him, so you couldn't tell what was going on in the story by following his artwork, not at all. And the one story that he subs on is one in which Iron Man, for altruistic reasons, to save the life of someone else, has to attack the Champions, a 1970s team, a 1970s LA-based super team. He attacks 3 members of the Champions: Iceman, another founding member of the original X-Men, the Black Widow, and Hercules. The Greek god, Hercules, Thor's best friend, Hercules. And the issue is, I mean, it's fairly good. I like George Custer's artwork, I tend to, but it drove me crazy when I read it originally, and rereading it drove me even crazier. Iron Man catches him by surprise, absolutely. Deals with Black Widow, absolutely. Deals with Iceman, absolutely. Catches Hercules by surprise and stuns him. But then, as the issue progresses, Hercules shakes off being stunned, stands up, and is looking straight at Iron Man and saying, "Enough is enough. I might have given you the benefit of the doubt because you are a fellow Avenger." Hercules had been an Avenger for a long time in a run that I loved. But now you've angered me, and I don't care. So, and I'm the Lion of Olympus. I'm the god Hercules, and I'm about to give you a whooping. And the issue goes on for page after page after page when that wouldn't happen. Hercules would simply shock Iron Man like a can of sardines. And it doesn't happen. And that kind of Marvel equivalence, Marvel's a lot, they do that a lot more seldom than DC. In DC, nobody ever loses to anybody else. It used to be. In Marvel, thanks to Stan Lee, Stan Lee's dictum was that, any superhero is going to be somebody's favorite superhero. And anybody can have a good day. So that under the best possible circumstances imaginable, with everything breaking his way, Daredevil, who has no superpowers at all except a heightened sense of smell and touch, might be able to defeat Prince Namor the Submariner, who's invulnerable, who can fly, and who can lift 85 tons in the clear air. But that it won't happen every time, and it's unlikely, and Daredevil would have to thank his lucky stars. Stan Lee sort of instituted a gradation of his characters where, if somebody dropped an atom bomb on the Thing, it would probably kill him. If somebody dropped an atom bomb on the Hulk, he would pick it up and throw it back. That sort of thing. So that issue bugged me. But this run ends with, it's George Perez doing the artwork, and boy, oh boy, this is not the best artwork that he does, but boy, oh boy, it is just amazing. Look at that final panel. With a hole in the floor going down to the floor below it, all those beaten Avengers. There's a final 2-issue story here where the team faces off against Ultron, a creation of Hank Pym during one of the times when he was out of his mind, who's made of adamantium, so they can't hurt him. And a lot of you will know Ultron from the movie, from the Avengers movie. And this started, really, another little mini tradition where the Avengers fights with Ultron are real slugfests, where the team does not come off well, where they barely make it through. And this was the first issue that was like that. George Perez has actually done 3 of those, 3 of those different times, because Ultron keeps coming back. But overall, a delightful era of the Avengers. My main complaint was that Bob Frank, the Wizard, is not left on the team. He has a few adventures in the course of this volume, and then is packed off to a hospital because you've got a heart condition. And Iron Man is the one who's bringing him to the hospital, and Tony Stark, Jim Shooter at least has the grace to have Tony Stark point out in his thoughts, isn't it ironic that I'm telling him he can't have the life of a costumed adventurer because he has a heart condition when I have a heart condition and I am a costumed adventurer? And I read that when it first came out, and I thought, well, it's a great dynamic for the team to have not only an older hero on the team, but a hero who is, to the best of his knowledge, the father of another member on the team. That's great. You should keep that, not get rid of him, not pack him off. You're stumbling right there in that dialogue on the way you could fix it. Surely Tony Stark could work up something to stabilize the Wizard's heartbeat so that he can play at least a part in their adventures. But 'twas not to be. So that's the comic that I'm reading on this Comic Wednesday. But then we have a couple of packages, and then we'll be done with this MegaStuff video, which is not going to be brief, but maybe it won't be 40 minutes. So let's see what this next one is. Oh my. Okay. All right. wow, all right, I didn't see this coming. This is the University of Chicago Press. This is by Michael Marshall, and it is the Genesis Quest. The geniuses and eccentrics on a journey to uncover the origin of life on Earth. Some scientists have argued that life began in the chemical-rich seas of the early Earth, the famous primordial soup, while others are convinced that life began in strange vents pumping hot water out of the sea floor, where the chemical reactions that sustained living cells could get started. Or perhaps life began in volcanic ponds on land, or in meteorite impact zones, or even in beds of clay. Each theory has attracted staunch believers who promote it with the almost religious fervor. But our pursuit of life's origins is more than a tale of bizarre, investigative zeal. It is a story that takes in some of the greatest discoveries in modern biology, from cells to DNA, from evolution to life's family tree. Okay, all right, well, it's a loaded subject, especially in creationist circles, which those of you who live outside the United States may not know what that is, because it's largely an American phenomenon where there's a splinter of Christianity, of Trump supporters here in the United States, who believe in creationism, young Earth creationism, where the Earth is 6,000 years old and was created out of nothing by a magical being. And one of the linchpins of creationism, it doesn't have many linchpins because there's not much to it, but one of the linchpins of it, this by the way, comes out in a day or two. It comes out on October 30th. And one of the linchpins of creationism is abiogenesis. How did non-living things become living things? The creationism, modern creationism, American creationism, absolutely lives by something called the God of the gaps idea, which is that anything that science doesn't have an absolutely locked down, provable explanation for must be God. And the reason it's called God of the gaps is because those gaps were much bigger 100 years ago. They're tiny now. And so it's an infinite rearguard action if you believe that sort of thing. And abiogenesis, the very subject of this book, how non-living things became living things, is their ultimate fallback. They all use it. Everybody from charlatans like Kent Hovind, that say that atheist scientists, evolutionists, believe that it rained for millions of years on rocks on the Earth, and then the rocks became soup, and then the soup became people. Reductionist stuff like that is what they fall back on completely. So I imagine that that's going to be haunting the background of this, but this is great because it will summarize, these kinds of popular science books will summarize research that I don't know anything about. So it'll be fascinating to do. And because it's October 30th, I can get to it right away. I need to get to it right away. And then we have the box. And then we'll be done. Let's see. It's heavy, so it could be another finished copy. Oh, it is another finished copy. Oh, all right. This comes out on October 27th, which I believe was yesterday. I'm not really sure. Oh, my. Okay, this is by Nicholas McDowell. This is Poet of Revolution, The Making of John Milton. John Milton has a unique claim on literary and intellectual history as the author of both Paradise Lost, the greatest narrative poem in English. Do we believe that, my faithful Donoghue-gonauts? Any takers for Co or Season on the Earth? No? Most of you probably won't know what that is. Or what about Idylls of the King? Or Omeros? But anyway, and Pro's defense of the execution of Charles I that influenced the French and American revolutions. Tracing Milton's literary, intellectual, and political development with unprecedented depth and understanding, Poet of Revolution is an unmatched biographical account of the formation of the mind that would go on to create Paradise Lost, but would first justify the killing of a king. Try to justify. There is no way to justify killing God's anointed, except for your own gain. That's what you want. Some people in Cromwell's rabble were honest about it, but Milton wasn't. In fact, he was the archpriest of dishonesty about it. Anyway, that's a tangent for another time. Biographers of Milton have always struggled to explain how the young poet became a notorious defender of regicide and other radical ideas such as freedom of the press, religious toleration, and republicanism. In this groundbreaking intellectual biography of Milton's formative years, Nicholas McDowell draws on recent archival discoveries to reconcile, at last, the poet and polemicist. He charts Milton's development from his earliest days as a London schoolboy through his university life and travels to Italy to his emergence as a public writer during the English Civil War. Okay, I know you're going to want to know, just like I do, who is this guy? Nicholas McDowell is professor of early modern literature and thought at the University of Exeter. Oh my, such a great school. Oh my. He is the author of The English Radical Imagination and Poetry and Allegiance in the English Civil Wars. And he's the co-editor of the Oxford Handbook of Milton. Big, fat volume, those Oxford handbooks, they're wonderful. Pricey, but wonderful. I had the Oxford Handbook of Milton. I don't anymore. Fantastic. Oh, wow. An intellectual biography of young Milton. Not the blind old sage, but a young Milton. Fantastic. All right. Well, this is for late October. So actually, both of these things go smack dab onto the reading. This is a TBR video. After all, I will be reading both of these tonight. Hungrily, eagerly reading both of these tonight. Because neither one of them is strange. It's not like I'm getting something I'm thinking, oh, God, the date's coming right up, so I need to get to it. I want to read both of these. So that's our mail. Two absolute winners. The beginnings of self-replicating life on Earth. And the beginnings of John Milton's intellectual life. Great. Fantastic. So it's that, and also the Avengers, and also complete hopelessness when it comes to NaNoWriMo. Just complete hopelessness. Send me your ideas. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, and I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.